I pay
You
my
need to
dues,
leave
I should be
HOA
allowed
property
access to my own
immediately.
property.
Sir,
The HOA
bylaws
president's
are
voice
explicit
cut through the
regarding
morning air like a
construction
whip.
schedule.
You must
She
move the
accused me
vehicle
of breaking
immediately.
community rules while I stood on the 2.3-acre parcel I had just purchased. A blonde woman in a vibrant pink blazer charged toward me, radiating fury. She waved a hefty binder, rattling off threats of fines, violations, and lawyers. The problem? My land was 47 feet outside her HOA's boundaries. I had triple-checked the county records, but she refused to consider the facts or glance at my documents. I kept my composure, quietly collecting evidence. It's an odd feeling, seeing someone's self-appointed authority crumble when confronted with hard truth. What's the wildest boundary dispute you've ever witnessed? Drop a comment below. The first time I drove onto Lot 47, it was just after sunrise. County Road 12 lay behind me, peaceful except for the faint hum of cicadas and a distant tractor's rumble beyond the tree line. I had spent 8 years saving for this unincorporated land. No HOA restrictions, just open space where my wife Nyan, our 6-year-old daughter Mara, and I could finally build something truly ours. I stepped out of the truck, boots crunching on gravel, and pulled the surveyor's tape from the bed. A month earlier, Ellis Draper had already marked the corners with steel pins and orange flags. I wanted to double-check the foundation layout before the excavator arrived next week. The morning air was rich with pine and damp earth. I spread the plat map over the truck hood, tracing the boundary lines with my finger. The land sloped gently toward a row of maples along the western edge. I could already picture the foundation, Mara's swing set, and Nain's planned garden beds. I grabbed the measuring tape and approached the eastern pin, feeling that quiet satisfaction when plans start to come alive. I didn't notice her until she was nearly upon me. Excuse me, what do you think you're doing? The voice was sharp, piercing enough to scatter a flock of starlings from a nearby oak. I looked up to see a woman in her early 50s, sharp-eyed, posture rigid, clearly unaccustomed to being contradicted. The morning sun reflected off her bright pink blazer. She stopped 10 feet away, clutching her binder like a badge of authority, studying me as if confidence could define ownership. I retracted my measuring tape with a soft click and returned to the truck, drawing the deed from my jacket pocket. "Ma'am, I appreciate the introduction, but this property isn't part of your HOA," I said, spreading the deed and county plat map across the truck hood. I tapped the boundary lines. "Pinnerest Meadows ends at Lot 32. This is Lot 47, 47 feet beyond your jurisdiction." She didn't even look. She waved the papers aside like I was offering a flyer for a car wash. "I don't need to see anything," she snapped, voice rising. "I know our boundaries and you're clearly inside them. People like you always think you can do whatever you want, but we have rules here." The phrase "people like you" hit me like a slap. I felt a flush rise to the back of my neck but kept my voice steady. "With respect, ma'am, the county records say otherwise. If you have a survey or amendment proving differently, I'd be glad to see it." She snapped the binder shut. "I don't need a survey. I've been HOA president for 9 years. I know every inch of this community." She fished a phone from her blazer pocket and snapped pictures of my truck, then of me standing on the property line. "You need to stop all construction immediately, or I'll fine you $500 per day and take legal action." Her hand shook slightly, and I caught a glimpse of her phone. She had already opened her contacts for an attorney. I stayed silent for a moment, then pulled out my own phone and photographed her standing on my land, binder in hand, pink blazer catching the morning light. "For the record," I said quietly, "you are trespassing on private property. I'm asking you politely to leave." Her face flushed red, mouth opening and closing as if deciding which threat to launch first. She finally jabbed a finger at me. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," she said, voice trembling. Then she turned sharply and marched back toward the cluster of cookie-cutter houses visible through the trees. I stood there, phone raised, wondering what she could possibly do next. That evening, I spread the same documents across the kitchen table. The overhead light made the county seal gleam faintly as Nayan leaned over, tracing every line. "So she refused to even look at any of this?" she asked, tapping the plat map. I nodded. "She just insisted she knew the boundaries." Nayan shook her head. "That's not how boundaries work." I smiled, tension still lingering. "No, it isn't." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing staying calm. Don't let her get under your skin," I squeezed back. "I'm trying," but even as I said it, Brenda's words echoed in my head. "People like you." I needed to revisit why I was so confident I was right. 6 weeks earlier, I had been scrolling through real estate listings on my laptop during a lunch break at my environmental consulting job. Nain had just returned from picking up Mara from kindergarten and leaned over my shoulder, pointing at a listing on County Road 12, 3 acres, she said. No HOA unincorporated. Roderick, this could be it. I clicked through the photos. Open land, mature trees along the edges, a gravel access road. The price was just within reach using our savings, and a small inheritance from Nain's grandmother. I called the realtor, a no-nonsense woman named Mara, and met her on site 2 days later. Mara, in her 40s with a clipboard and a battered pickup, walked us around the perimeter, pointing out old survey stakes. County records show this lot has never been part of Pinehurst Meadows, she said. The HOA boundary stops well before this property line. You're clear out here. I requested a title search anyway. A week later, she emailed a PDF. Clean title, no liens, no HOA mention. I hired Ellis Draper for a new survey before closing. Mid-50s, quiet, equipped with a transit and GPS rig that looked pricier than my truck. He spent half a day marking corners with steel pins and orange flags and handed me a certified report with county stamps on every page. Ellis tapped the map, showing the HOA boundary ending at neighboring lots and my eastern line starting 47.2 feet beyond. No overlap, no ambiguity. I asked if the HOA could have amended boundaries. He shook his head. Any changes must be recorded, and the last filing was in 1998. Nothing since. I filed the report, deed, and plat and closed on the property 2 weeks later. We celebrated with takeout pizza and cheap champagne on the tailgate as Mara ran circles around the flags, laughing like she had discovered a secret kingdom. It felt like the end of a long journey. Turns out it was just the beginning. Sitting at the kitchen table that evening, I double-checked everything. The deed named me as sole owner. The plat matched perfectly. Ellis's survey confirmed every pin. No gray area. Brenda Carmichael was either misinformed or lying. Either way, it didn't matter. Nain finished her coffee, stacked the papers, and asked, "What are you going to do?" I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Document everything. Keep copies. Call Mara in the morning. Over lunch the next day, I caught Mara between showings. Half amused, half weary, she echoed the same advice. Document everything. By the end of the call, I had a new folder on my phone labeled HOA Dispute. I uploaded the deed, plat map, Ellis's survey, and my photo of Brenda trespassing. I started a notes file detailing the confrontation, time, words, and threats. Paranoid? Maybe. But as Mara said, document everything. That night I told Nan. She nodded. Good, you're being smart. And I'm proud you stayed calm today. I know people like you stung, I shrugged. It did, but I've learned a quiet response hits harder than any argument. 2 days later, an envelope appeared under my truck's windshield wiper. No stamp, no return address, just my name scrawled angrily across the front. I opened it standing in the driveway with my morning coffee. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of HOA letterhead, topped with the Pinehurst Meadows logo, a small drawing of pine trees encircling a meadow, the kind of generic image you'd expect to find on a clip art site. The letter was dated the day after Brenda and I had our confrontation, and it wasted no time getting to the point. Notice of violation. Unauthorized construction on HOA common land. Fine, $500 per day until compliance. I read it twice before snapping a photo with my phone, then slipped the page back into the envelope. The wording was stiff and formulaic, almost like she'd copied it straight from an HOA enforcement template she'd found online. At the bottom, Brenda's signature swept across the page in the same tight, controlled handwriting as on the envelope. I didn't respond right away. I wanted to, badly, but Mara's advice echoed in my mind. Document everything. So I saved the photo in my HOA dispute folder, noted the date and time I'd found the letter, and opened my laptop to write a reply. I kept it brief and factual, restating that my property was located outside HOA jurisdiction and attaching copies of both the plat map and Ellis's survey report. I politely requested that she withdraw the notice and refrain from further contact. It felt good to respond calmly, professionally, like I was addressing a business matter instead of a threat, but my hands still trembled a little as I closed the laptop. 2 days later, the 4th day since our initial encounter, my phone rang at 6 in the morning. I was still in bed, Nayan asleep beside me, when the vibration startled me awake. The number wasn't familiar, but it had a local area code, so I answered groggily. Hello? Brenda's voice cut through the speaker, sharp and grating like nails on a chalkboard. Mr. Hayes, this is Brenda Carmichael. I'm calling to inform you that your email response is unacceptable. You remain in violation of HOA covenants, and if you do not stop construction immediately, I will have no choice but to escalate the matter. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, trying to shake off sleep. Ms. Carmichael, it's 6 in the morning. She didn't hesitate. This is a serious issue, Mr. Hayes. You're making our neighborhood look bad. We've worked hard to keep this community respectable, and I won't let you ruin that. There it was again. Respectable. She didn't have to spell it out. The meaning beneath the word was crystal clear. Anger flared in my chest, but I forced myself to stay composed. Miss Carmichael, I've already shown you documents proving my property isn't under your HOA's jurisdiction. If you have proof that says otherwise, I'm more than willing to look at it. If not, I need you to stop contacting me, she scoffed. I don't need proof. I know where our boundaries are. I drew in a slow breath. Then there's nothing more to talk about. Have a good day. I ended the call before she could say anything else, then immediately opened my notes app and logged the time and date. I wrote down everything she'd said, especially that word, respectable, and what it really meant. Nayan stirred beside me, blinking in the dim morning light. Was that her again? I nodded. 6 in the morning. Nayan groaned and yanked the pillow over her head. She's insane. Day 6 was when things escalated. I was out at the site marking where the foundation footers would go when I heard footsteps behind me. Turning around, I saw Brenda, phone in hand, taking pictures of my truck, my tools, the bright orange survey flags. She didn't speak a word. She just walked the perimeter, snapping photos like she was conducting an official inspection. I watched for a few seconds, then pulled out my own phone and started recording. Miss Carmichael, I said evenly, you're standing on private property. I'm asking you to leave. She glanced up, smirked, and went right back to taking pictures. You can't trespass on HOA common grounds, Mr. Hayes. I kept the camera steady. This isn't HOA property. You've been given documentation that proves you're trespassing. I'm asking you again to leave, or I'll contact the authorities. She finally lowered her phone and stared at me. For a moment, I thought she might actually back down. Instead, she gave me a tight, smug smile. Go ahead, call them. They'll tell you the same thing I just did. Then she turned and walked away, heels clicking sharply against the gravel road. I stopped recording, saved the video, and realized my hands were shaking. I didn't call the police, not yet. But I logged the encounter, noting the time, her exact words, and the fact that she'd ignored my warning and trespassed anyway. I was building a record piece by piece, and every run-in with Brenda became another entry. By day 8, another letter arrived, this one even more aggressive. The supposed fine had jumped to $750 a day, and she was now threatening legal action if construction didn't stop within 48 hours. I photographed the letter, logged it, and finally made the call I'd been avoiding since the first envelope showed up. I reached out to a lawyer. His name was Quincy Aldridge. I'd found him after a quick search for property dispute attorneys nearby. His website was plain and no nonsense. Just a professional headshot and a list of practice areas that included real estate and HOA law. I left a voicemail summarizing the situation, and he called me back within an hour. His voice was calm and steady, the kind of tone you'd expect from a seasoned professor. Mr. Hayes, he said, from what you've described, it sounds like you have a very strong case. The county plat map and a certified survey are about as solid as it gets in a boundary dispute. Just hearing that lifted a weight from my shoulders. So what should I do next? I asked. First, Quincy said without hesitation, send me everything, your deed, plat map, survey, copies of her letters, photos, videos, call logs. I'll review it all and prepare a cease and desist letter addressed to Ms. Carmichael and the HOA board. You need to leave HOA property, right now. The HOA president's voice tore through the morning air as she accused me of breaking neighborhood rules. I was standing on the 2.3-acre lot. I had just purchased when this blonde woman in a hot pink blazer came charging toward me like a storm. She waved a thick binder in my direction, threatening me with fines, violations, and attorneys. Small problem. My land sat 47 feet outside of her HOA boundary. I'd confirmed that detail 3 times with the county recorder. She refused to hear me out or even glance at my paperwork. So, I stayed calm and started collecting evidence. Ever seen fake authority collapse when the truth hits? Drop a comment below. What's the craziest boundary dispute you've ever come across? The sun had barely crept above the trees when I pulled my truck onto Lot 47 for the first time, as its rightful owner. County Road 12 stretched quietly behind me, the morning broken only by the buzz of cicadas and the distant hum of a tractor somewhere beyond the tree line. 8 years of saving had finally brought me to this. 2.3 acres of unincorporated land, no HOA, no restrictions, just open space where my wife, Nyan, our 6-year-old daughter, Mara, and I could finally build something truly our own. I stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, and grabbed the roll of surveyor's tape from the truck bed. A month earlier, Ellis Draper had already marked the corners with steel stakes and orange flags, but I wanted to double-check everything before the excavator arrived next week. The air smelled like pine and damp soil. I spread the plat map across the hood of my truck, tracing the boundary lines with my finger. The land sloped gently toward a line of maple trees on the western side, and I could already picture it. The house foundation here, Mara's swing set over there, and Nayan's garden tucked near the edge of the woods. I picked up the measuring tape and walked toward the eastern marker, feeling that quiet, grounded satisfaction of a plan finally turning real. I didn't hear her until she was right behind me. Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" The voice was sharp enough to startle a flock of starlings from the oak tree nearby. I turned and saw her, mid-50s, sharp eyes, rigid posture, the kind of presence that screamed she wasn't used to being told no. The morning sun glinted off the bright pink of her blazer as she stopped about 10 feet away, binder clutched to her chest like a badge of office. She looked me up and down, like she could measure ownership just by confidence. I let the measuring tape retract with a quiet click and walked back to the truck. "Ma'am, I appreciate the concern," I said evenly, pulling the deed from my jacket pocket. "But this property isn't part of your HOA. Here's my deed and the county's official plat map." I unfolded both across the hood, pointing to the lines. "Pinerist Meadows ends at Lot 32. I'm Lot 47. That's 47 feet outside your jurisdiction." She didn't even glance at the documents. With a flick of her hand, she waved them away as if I were passing out discount flyers. "I don't need to see anything," she snapped. "I know where our boundaries are, and you're clearly standing inside them. People like you always think the rules don't apply. But we have standards here." That phrase, "people like you," hit harder than I expected. I felt heat rise at the back of my neck, but I kept my tone calm. "With respect, ma'am, the county's records say otherwise. If you have a survey or plat amendment that shows something different, I'm happy to take a look." She slammed her binder shut. "I don't need a survey. I've been HOA president for 9 years. I know every inch of this neighborhood." Then she yanked her phone from her pocket, snapped a photo of my truck, and another of me by the property line. "You are to stop all construction activity immediately, or I'll fine you $500 per day and involve legal counsel." Her hand trembled slightly as she lowered her phone, and I caught a glimpse of the screen. She was already scrolling to a contact labeled attorney. I stood still for a moment, then quietly took out my own phone. I raised it and snapped a photo of her standing on my property, binder in hand, pink blazer glowing in the morning light. "For the record," I said calmly, "you're trespassing on private land. I'm politely asking you to leave." Her face flushed crimson. She stared at me, speechless for a moment, then jabbed a finger toward me. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," she hissed, voice shaking with fury. Then she spun around and marched back toward the row of identical homes barely visible through the trees, leaving me there, phone still raised, wondering what in the world she planned to do next. That evening, I spread the same papers across our kitchen table, the place where it had all started. The light overhead made the county seal glint faintly as Nayan leaned over my shoulder, studying every line. "She refused to even look at this?" she asked, tapping the seal on the map. "Didn't so much as glance," I said. "Just insisted she knew the boundaries." Nayan shook her head. "That's not how boundaries work." I managed a small smile despite the tension still coiled in my chest. "No, it's not." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You did the right thing staying calm. Don't let her get under your skin." "I'm trying," I said, but her words, "people like you," were still echoing in my head. I needed to remind myself why I was so sure I was in the right. 6 weeks earlier, I'd been sitting in that same kitchen during lunch break, scrolling through real estate listings from my job at an environmental consulting firm. Nain had just come back from picking up Mara from kindergarten. She leaned over my shoulder, pointing to a listing on County Road 12. 2.3 acres, she read aloud. No HOA, unincorporated Roderick. This could be it. I clicked through the photos. Open land, mature trees, a gravel access road. Already in place, the price was within reach if we combined our savings and the small inheritance her grandmother had left. I called the realtor that same afternoon. Her name was Mara, coincidentally, the same as our daughter, and she met us at the property 2 days later. Mara, the realtor, was a straightforward woman in her 40s with a clipboard and a pickup that had seen better days. She walked us around the perimeter, pointing to old survey stakes left by a previous seller years ago. County records show this parcel was never included in Pinehurst Meadows, she said, flipping through her notes. The HOA boundary stops well before this line. You're clear out here. Still, I asked her to pull a title search just to be sure. A week later, she emailed me the results. Clean title, no liens, no encumbrances, and no mention of any HOA whatsoever. Before closing, I hired Ellis Draper to run a new survey. Ellis was quiet, mid-50s, with a GPS rig that looked worth more than my truck. He spent half a day marking the corners with steel pins and orange flags, then handed me a certified survey stamped by the county. He pointed to the map, showing exactly where the HOA boundary ended and where my eastern property line began, 47.2 feet past their jurisdiction. No overlap, no confusion, he said. I asked if there was any chance the HOA had updated their boundaries since the original plat was filed. He shook his head. They'd have to file any amendments with the county. Last record for Pinehurst Meadows was in 1998, nothing newer. I paid him, added the report to my folder with the deed and plat, and closed on the property 2 weeks later. That night, Nyan and I celebrated with takeout pizza and cheap champagne on the tailgate of my truck, while Mara ran in circles around the orange flags, laughing like she'd just claimed her own tiny kingdom. It felt like the end of a long road, turns out. It was only the beginning. Now, sitting at that same kitchen table surrounded by documents, I went over everything again. The deed listed me as sole owner, with a legal description that matched the plat down to the inch. Ellis's survey confirmed the corner pins lined up perfectly. There was no gray area here. Brenda Carmichael, HOA president, was either mistaken or deliberately overstepping. Nan finished her coffee and stacked the papers neatly. So, what are you going to do? I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Document everything. Keep copies. Call Mara tomorrow and let her know what happened. The next day, I caught Mara between showings on her lunch break. Her tone was calm but knowing. She'd clearly seen this kind of mess before. Document everything, she repeated, echoing the same advice my friend Quincy would later give. By the end of that call, I had a new folder on my phone labeled HOA Dispute. I uploaded photos of the deed, the plat map, and Ellis's survey report. I added the picture of Brenda standing on my property and started a notes file recording every detail I remembered from that morning. Her exact words, the threats, the timestamps. It felt a little paranoid. But Mara's advice stuck. Document everything. That night, when I told Nayan, she nodded in approval. Good, she said. You're being smart. And I'm proud of you for keeping calm. I know what she said. People like you must have stung. I tried to shrug it off, but she could see through me. It did, I admitted. But sometimes silence says more than arguing ever could. 2 days later, I found an envelope tucked under my truck's windshield wiper. No stamp. No return address, just my name, scrawled across the front in tight, angry handwriting. I stood there in the driveway, coffee in hand, staring at it. Then I tore it. Open. No changes to the recorded plat boundaries have ever been submitted to this office since the original, filing back in 1998. Quincy included the county's certification in a follow-up email to Spencer Truitt, copying Brenda and the HOA board. The message was courteous but firm, explaining that Mr. Truitt's assertion about updated boundaries was incorrect, and warning that continuing to press the issue could be viewed as harassment. Quincy also reminded them of the 10-day deadline to comply with the cease and desist notice. 3 days passed without a word. Then on the 18th day, Quincy called with news. "I met with Spencer Truitt this morning," he said. "Just the two of us off the record coffee meeting. I walked him through everything. Your deed, the plat, Ellis's survey, and the county certification." He looked honestly surprised. "I don't think Brenda gave him the full story before she hired him." Quincy paused. I could hear a pen tapping on his desk. "He said he'll talk to his client and get back to me." My impression? He knows this case doesn't stand a chance, and he's probably trying to persuade Brenda to drop it. I felt a flicker of hope. "Do you think she'll listen?" I asked. Quincy exhaled. "Hard to say. Some clients take their lawyer's advice. Others dig in out of pride. We'll find out soon enough." That answer came faster than I expected. That same evening, Quincy forwarded me another email from Truitt, shorter this time, more hesitant. He wrote that he was reviewing the matter with his client and asked for additional time to respond. There was no mention of boundary changes, no threats, no legal posturing, just a vague request for more time. Quincy's note at the top was brief. "He's rattled. Stand by." I showed the email to Nyan. She read it, then smiled faintly. "She's losing," she said quietly. "Even her lawyer doesn't believe her." I wanted to feel relieved, but I'd learned not to underestimate Brenda's stubbornness. Sure enough, 2 days later, Quincy called with news that made my stomach drop. "The HOA board met last night," he said. "They voted to pursue legal action. 4 in favor, 3 against. Brenda's pushing hard, and she's got just enough backing to keep this going." He explained that the vote didn't change the legal facts. I still had all the documentation on my side, but it meant Brenda wasn't backing down. "She's entrenched," Quincy said. "At this point, it's about ego, not facts. But the vote was close, 4-3. That means there are board members who aren't comfortable with this," Quincy continued. "If we can get them accurate information, maybe we can sway the vote, or at least create enough pressure that Brenda has to step back." He asked if I'd attend the next HOA meeting as a guest to present my side directly. I hesitated. The thought of walking into a room full of Brenda's supporters made my chest tighten. But Quincy's reasoning was solid. "If you show the undecided members that you're reasonable, well-prepared, and not backing down, they might start questioning Brenda's motives." I agreed. The meeting was set for the following week. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, playing out scenarios in my mind. What if they refused to hear me? What if Brenda turned everyone against me? What if this dragged on for months, draining our savings into legal fees? Nain rolled over and rested her hand on my chest. "You're thinking too loud," she whispered. I exhaled. "I just don't know how much longer I can keep doing this." She propped herself up on one elbow, eyes soft in the dim light. "You're doing it because it's right. Because if you don't, she wins, and she doesn't deserve to." I nodded. She was right. Brenda had built her little empire on intimidation and exhaustion, counting on people to give up. But I wasn't going to be one of them. Not this time. Then came day 18, a shock I didn't see coming. I was halfway through reviewing a soil contamination report at work when my phone buzzed. The subject line made my pulse spike. Legal notice, Pinerist Meadows HOA versus Roderick Hayes. Inside was a court filing, a request for a temporary injunction to halt all construction on my property. The HOA was taking me to court. The document accused me of encroaching on common land, violating covenants and causing irreparable harm to the community. I read it twice, hands gripping the phone tighter each time. At the bottom, a court date 3 weeks away, small claims court. I forwarded it to Quincy immediately, then called him. He answered on the first ring. "I saw it," he said, calm but edged with steel. "It's a weak filing, Roderick. They're grasping at straws, but we'll respond properly and prepare for trial." He outlined the plan. We'd file a formal response to the injunction and a counterclaim seeking a declaratory judgment that my property lay outside HOA jurisdiction, along with damages for harassment and legal fees. "The good news," Quincy said, "is that everything's now out in the open. No more back-and-forth letters. A judge will review the facts and that'll be the end of it." I asked how strong our case was. Quincy didn't hesitate. "Rock solid. They've got no survey, no amended plat, no county documentation. Just Brenda's word, and that doesn't stand up in court. I hung up, caught between relief and dread. Relief that there'd finally be a resolution. Dread at the thought of standing in court defending something that should never have been questioned. That evening, I began preparing. Quincy had given me a checklist. Deed, enlarged copy of the plat, Ellis's survey report, a USB with all photos, videos, and correspondence. I went to a print shop, had the plat blown up and laminated. Organized the survey report into a binder, tabs for coordinates, GPS data, photos of corner pins, Ellis's signed affidavit. Labeled and time-stamped every file on the USB. By midnight, the kitchen table looked like a war room. Nain came down in her robe, looked around, and smiled faintly. "You're really ready for this, huh?" "I have to be," I said. Day 20 brought a development I should have anticipated, but didn't. At 5:30 a.m., my phone chimed with a motion alert from the security camera. I opened the feed and froze. Brenda stood at my temporary gate on the access road. The sky was still dim, dawn barely breaking. She looked disheveled. No makeup, no trademark pink blazer, just a heavy coat and a ponytail. For a brief second, I thought she'd come to apologize. Then she pulled bolt cutters from a canvas bag. I sat up, fully awake as she fit the cutters around the padlock. Her hands trembled, but she worked methodically until the lock snapped open with a metallic crack. She dropped the lock, unrolled a length of red tape, and stretched it across the gate. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. She stepped back, looked at it, then turned her gaze directly at the camera. She knew I was watching and didn't care. She muttered something I couldn't hear, then disappeared into the shadows. I sat there stunned, heart racing. Then I threw on clothes and drove out to the property. The sun was just rising when I arrived. The broken lock lay on the gravel, the red tape fluttering absurdly in the breeze. I photographed everything. Close-ups of the cut, wide shots, screenshots of the footage with timestamps. Then I called the police. When the officer arrived, same one as before, he greeted me calmly. "What happened, Mr. Hayes?" I showed him the lock, the tape, the footage. He watched in silence, his jaw tightening as Brenda cut the lock. "This is the same woman from before?" he asked. I nodded. "Brenda Carmichael, HOA president." He sighed, jotting notes. "Mr. Hayes, this has moved beyond a civil matter. That's property damage and trespassing, clearly recorded. Can you arrest her?" I asked. He hesitated. "I can file a report, but since there's an ongoing court case, the DA might handle it within that context, unless you press separate criminal charges." "I want the report," I said. "My lawyer will need it." He nodded, documented everything, and gave me a case number. "Keep this," he said. "Your lawyer will want it. And between us, she's digging her own grave. The judge won't like this." After he left, I called Quincy. He answered groggily. It was barely 7 a.m., but his voice sharpened as soon as I explained. "Send me the footage and report number," he said. "This is perfect. Exactly what we needed." I sent everything immediately. Within an hour, he called back. "I'm filing the counterclaim today," he said. "We're asking the court to declare your property outside the HOA's authority, and for $2,500 in damages for harassment and vandalism, plus $1 and $200 in legal fees." That footage of her cutting the lock? It'll play beautifully in court. A grim satisfaction settled in my chest. Brenda had finally gone too far. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. Quincy filed that afternoon, and I received confirmation that it was on the record. For the next 7 days, I lived in tense anticipation, working by day, checking my cameras, reviewing my materials every night. Nan tried to keep things normal for Mara, but I could see the strain in her eyes. "One more week," she said softly one evening. "Then this is over." I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't shake the image of Brenda cutting that lock, her trembling hands, her defiant stare. A few days before the hearing, Vernon stopped by. He said the neighborhood was buzzing, rumors flying that I was ruining property values or that Brenda had gone too far. 4 board members are questioning things now, he told me. They're not happy about the lawsuit, but Brenda still has just enough backing to keep pushing. I thanked him and asked if he'd testify if needed. "Absolutely," he said. "Someone needs to see this through." The night before the hearing, I didn't sleep at all.